We'll cut all of that. Okay.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Film Bouillabaisse. I got some troubling news for you guys. We're thinking of ending things on this channel. Isn't that right, Allison?
That's right. We come back from hiatus just to tell you the channel's over.
No, we're kidding. April Fools. We're actually going to talk about the movie I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
It's a new Netflix original movie based upon a book that came out a handful of years ago that I've read. Logan hasn't.
I have not read the book, so you'll have to give me the differences. I heard that the ending is fairly different between the book and the movie.
It is, and I'll talk about that at the end. So then if you don't want any spoilers, then we'll tell you when to cut it off.
That sounds good, because I feel like this is a movie that's hard not to spoil to a certain extent. There's so much interpretation involved in watching it, and so much like trying to figure out what's going on, that, I don't know about you, but I don't like people to tell me what movies like this are about. Like, I never look up analysis afterwards, because I come up with my interpretation, and I don't really want it to be, I don't want to be told I'm wrong, because I subscribe very much to the death of the author theory, and I don't think the director gets to decide what a movie's about. I think the audience gets to decide what the movie's about. And I know what I think it's about, and what I think the themes are and everything. And so if you're like me and you don't want to be told what I think about it, you probably shouldn't watch much more of this until you see the movie. But I intend to tell somewhat what I think it's about anyway.
Or you can be like me, and nearly immediately after watching the movie, you pull up a podcast, the Slate Spoiler Special, on it just to see what other people are thinking. Are they thinking the same things as you? And maybe that's why you tuned into our YouTube channel, to see if we are thinking the same things as you. So, first off, let's just talk about the director, Charlie Kaufman. Now, he has written a number of films like Adaptation, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but this is only his third film that he's directed. The other two, Anomalisa and Synecdoche, New York, starring the late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman. Now, this film he has written and directed, and it is an adapted screenplay. Now, the book came out to pretty good reviews a few years ago. It's known as a literary thriller. And from there, it starts kind of sparse. A lot of it's in the narrator's head.
Yeah, it's got a really interesting, slow beginning, which I actually found captivating. Like, the first 15 minutes of the movie is a conversation that happens in a car. And it's like uncut, just 15 minutes, two people talking in a car as they're driving, and nothing else happens. And I was like, that would ordinarily be really boring and tedious, but I really liked it, and I found the conversation consistently interesting. And, once you get into the movie and start to figure out what the movie's about, you can go back and realize that the dialogue has lots of little clues and teasers and things to think about in that regard. But I never got bored watching that part.
So I loved that part. That was actually some of my favorite parts. And they actually reference the late, great director, John Cassavetes, who I love. And they even brought up my favorite John Cassavetes film. So John Cassavetes' film, or his film work, his oeuvre, are these films where it's very dialogue driven. Maybe not a lot happens, but it's just a lot of people talking. And so the new movement of that Mark Duplass and Joe Swanberg have brought about in the last 10 to 15 years is called the mumblecore movement. So mumblecore is kind of a subsect of the Cassavetes dialogue-driven scene. So if you like films like My Dinner at Andre, you will probably love the talking scenes in the car in this film.
Yeah, so it's got the main girl, whose name is Lucy, I guess. It kind of changes throughout the movie. And then she is going on a trip with her boyfriend, Jake. And it's interesting you say the Philip Seymour Hoffman connection, because Jake reminded me a lot of Philip Seymour Hoffman in this movie. And they're going to his parents' house to meet them for the first time. And she is feeling trepidation about the relationship. She's thinking of ending things, hence the name of the movie. And she just seems kind of cold and distant and not really that into her boyfriend. And they talk about lots of different things. They talk about poetry and they talk about art, and they're kind of intellectuals, and they go back and forth about a lot of different things as they're driving in the car, and I found it really interesting.
When I first picked up the book, I thought that the title was referencing suicide. And I wondered, did you also think that when you started the film, or did you know that it was about somebody thinking about the ending of a relationship?
Well, I should say spoilers here, but I still think it's about suicide. I think that's what the title means.
So every time that she's in the car, she's narrating her thoughts to you, the audience, and she's saying that the relationship's good, but it's not really going anywhere. She's thinking of ending things. Did you notice that every time she thinks that, Jake almost has a visceral, physical reaction to it, almost like she's spoken it aloud?
Yeah, no, that's true. And there might be a reason why Jake seems to be able to read her thoughts to a certain extent.
Well, we've seen the movie, so we know why, but...
Well, I don't know if we know why. We have theories as to why. I know what I think.
So we get to his parents' house, and it's really weird because all of a sudden they're just cruising down the road, and then all of a sudden they're there. There's not those usual, like, mile markers where you say, okay, well, now we're getting close, or even there's like a stop sign or anything. They're just there's just snow, and then they're pulled up in front of the house. They get inside, and the mom is played by Toni Collette, who, I am borderline obsessed with. She's on the top floor waving frantically from them. And the dad, played by David Thewlis.
Professor Lupin himself.
So I will admit that I thought at first that it was an Australian actor when I saw him. Do you know who I mean?
No. Who are you talking about?
Rhys Ifans. Is he Australian? Anyway, so they get inside and it's a pretty normal conversation for first meeting the parents. I mean, there's some cringy parts, but her dynamic changes too because he just keeps saying, oh, she's an artist. Oh, she's studying gerontology. Oh, she's studying this. And meanwhile, the parents' ages are changing.
There's a lot of things that don't add up because in the car he says that his mother is sick and can't really provide for them, like cook them a dinner or do much for them, not to expect much. When they get there, the mother seems very vivacious and lively and fine, but then things keep kind of just weirdly changing in the house. Like there's a dog and then there's not a dog. The parents are one age and then the parents are another age. Nothing seems to be consistent.
There's a sign on his door that says Jake's childhood bedroom. And I mean, who would put that kind of sign on the door? It was just very Kaufman. So eventually they leave the house, and on the way home, even though there's a blizzard, he wants to stop at this kind of a Dairy Queen knockoff. And do you remember what it's called? It's called like Thurleytown.
Is it Tinleytown or something like that? I don't really remember.
And that was like the creepiest part. And so they get these gigantic Oreo burrs, but it's basically a blizzard. She even like holds the cup up, and you know how they do at Dairy Queen where they like flip it upside down.
Yeah, and he's kind of ignoring her a little bit the whole time. She keeps saying she has to get home because she has to work early the next morning. She's got a lot of work to do. And I want to get home. It's snowing so hard. It's a blizzard. I got to get back. And he just keeps kind of ignoring her and wanting to do these side errands, going off to these places, stopping on the side of the road. And she keeps saying, why are you stopping? I want to go home. What are you doing? And he just won't really pay attention to her needs there.
The whole movie is very much kind of like a dream, where it makes sense in a dream where you go in a room and there's now a whole platter of food there that wasn't there before, or people's age can change. That makes sense in a dream, and so it is a very dreamlike.
Yeah, I mean, it did make me think. I'm a huge, as you know, if you watch this channel, I'm a huge David Lynch fan. Love David Lynch, and a lot of the kind of, inconsistencies and dream logic and hard to figure out things in this movie made me think of Lynch. It's not visually like his movies at all. Stylistically, it's not, but the confusing elements and the not really knowing what's going on and everything seeming like a dream was very Lynchian.
Well, speaking of Lynchian, near the beginning, they show a janitor at a high school or maybe a middle school, walking through the hallways, and the kids are practicing for the production of Oklahoma. So I loved that. There's so many Oklahoma references in this. Jake himself is a theater buff, a Broadway buff, and he just names all the musicals he's into. And it's kind of a leitmotif Oklahoma is, because it's brought up so many times throughout the course of the film. And I wondered if you caught any little Easter eggs.
I wouldn't say I caught any Easter eggs because I don't know Oklahoma that well. I think I've seen it once or twice. But I noticed that it kept coming up, and he kept talking about it and saying things like, oh yeah, the kids in the Oklahoma productions that they put on every year, I see them later after they leave school in the store, and she doesn't know what he's talking about. And then there's a whole Oklahoma staging scene at the very, very end. And yeah, it's interesting how often that comes up. Do you want to get into like deep analysis of what this movie actually means and is about, or do you want to leave it to people's imaginations?
Let's okay. If you want to watch, if you don't want any spoilers, click. Okay. So where the book and the movie depart. So pretty much the novel and the book are really similar until he pulls up at the high school and goes inside. That's where it departs. So in the book, this is what made me love the book. It turns into a legit horror thriller, survival horror piece, because she's running from him and hiding and trying to fashion weapons and trick him, and she's freaking out. Then after that, then the very ending minus the musical number is similar, but there's this whole like third or quarter of the book that's her like running from the janitor that's chasing her, and I absolutely loved it. And then that's missing from the film.
Yeah, I thought the trailer for this movie made it look like a horror movie, but I would not characterize it as a horror movie at all. There's some creepy parts in it, but it's definitely not scary.
Not at all. Not at all. There's some spooky vibes, you know, when she goes down to the basement to put some laundry into the washing machine. That's kind of creepy, and just the how he gets when he's driving to the high school after the ice creams. He gets a little aggravated with the ice creams melting in the car because they couldn't eat like 36-ounce blizzards during a blizzard. Ill-conceived. Okay, analysis, go.
I'll tell you what I think, okay? And I might be wrong here, but this is my interpretation. So I think that Jake is the janitor from the high school. He's old, he's miserable, he has a lot of regrets in his life. He is talking about a lot how he feels invisible, he feels unappreciated. He has this whole thing where he's caring for his elderly parents who have dementia or very sick and dying, and no one appreciates it. He just feels like he's unseen. And I think that the main girl, Lucy or Louisa or Anne or whatever he calls her, or Amy, he keeps changing her name, is something he's created in his mind to support him, because she comments on how her function is to be there to acknowledge him and validate him and support him. And that's why she's kind of present in all of his old memories about what his house was like, what his parents were like at different points in time. He feels like an intellectual who's not understood, and you know, he keeps bouncing off of her, and sometimes she's kind of dumb and he can impress her with his intellectual things. Sometimes she kind of matches him or surpasses him in intellectualism, so she's someone he can have a debate with. She's studying gerontology because he wants someone to help him with his parents. She is a poet because he was a poet or was into poetry. The poem that she recites in the car is the same as one that's found in a book in his room. She's a painter because he used to be a painter. So there's all these little like tie-ins. They keep using the same line of dialogue that would kind of overlap between the two characters. And then I think that's why her reality is so fragmented, is she's not a real person. So she's only exists in his mind. So that's why nothing makes sense from her point of view, and things keep jumping around and becoming different. I also think he's closeted gay because he objects to the use of the word sissy. He objects to the idea that like a mother is to blame for her son's homosexuality. He talks extensively about musical theater and how much he's into it. So I think there's that element to it. What else was I going to say? So that's what I think that is about. And then, their origin story, he lifts from a Robert Zemeckis romantic comedy that he sees as the older. That was hilarious.
Sick Robert Zemeckis burn. I was dying.
And then at the very end, he goes out into his car in the blizzard, takes all his clothes off, and starts to freeze. And I think the title, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, refers to his desire to end his life and just go out because he has so many regrets and so much pain. That's what I think that's about. And so that's my interpretation of the film.
There's plenty of straight men that like musicals. I think that some of the things that you brought up are more the director infiltrating in, the director as a auteur kind of theory. That just sounds like stuff that Charlie Kaufman is interested in people talking about. It's not stuff I remember from the book. But basically, toward the end, you see an older version of Lucy. She's a, middle-aged woman with red hair, and and she talks about like how she can't remember Jake because she says something like, you asked me to remember a mosquito that bit me 40 years ago. And she talks about how she was celebrating an anniversary with her girlfriend at a restaurant, and he came over and chatted with her, and that was pretty much it. He was maybe a little bit creepy. And so he kind of wonders like if that had taken a different spin and they had become a couple. So I think that it was kind of a regret or just something that he saw happening in his life.
Yeah, I think that interaction really happened, and I think that he then fashioned his imaginary girlfriend out of that interaction, which was just brief and didn't really go anywhere.
Good performances. I thought the ending part was a little lackluster and needlessly weird, even for Charlie Kaufman.
So yeah, I was gonna say that's the ending where they have the ballet number in the high school, and then they have the clown animated thing, and then they have this long acceptance speech on the set of Oklahoma. All of that got a little bit pretentious for me. That's where the movie started to lose me a little bit. I loved it up until that, and then I was like, this is a little too artsy fartsy. Like, you could have kept it a little bit more grounded and been better. And I think it went on a little too long. But apart from that, I loved it. But yeah, I agree that ending was a little bit much.
It got a little bit bloated at a runtime of 2 hours and about 15 minutes.
Definitely agree with that.
So, performances, did you like everybody?
I thought everybody was great. Toni Collette was fantastic. And, having to play different ages and different levels of ability and competence was good. I thought everybody was really good. I really liked the actor who played Jake. I don't know his name.
Jesse Plemons from Breaking Bad. And he's married to Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah, great performances, really good cinematography. Like at the very, very beginning, there's all these just shots of the house from different angles without any people in it that I thought were really beautiful. I thought the movie looked great. Great cinematography, good direction. If you're the kind of person who needs like a cut and dried beginning, middle, and end story with not a lot of room for interpretation, this movie will probably frustrate you. But I liked I liked the thing where you have to kind of read your own interpretation into the movie. I think that's fun.
All right. Well, that sounds like we're wrapping it up here at Film Bouillabaisse. Keep it real. See you next time.
Bye.